All right. So now we're going to turn to Keith Martin Unplugged, and I picked this photo of you because it has everything about you. That's you've got a car that's broken down, and it's got your old logo on. So I thought that was kind of very appropriate.
Yeah, thank you very much for the memory.
So what was going on in this picture?
Before we start, I'd like to take just a moment to have a moment of silence, just to give thanks that we're all here. We've lived through this year together. To give thanks for all of the joy that the cars have brought into our lives by bringing us together. I think we have a lot to be grateful for. I think we've turned the corner and we're moving to a better place. So I just want to thank all of you for being a part of this family and for being here tonight. Okay.
Yeah, thanks. Let's
now
take a moment.
That's a profound kind of thing, whereas the picture is a ridiculous kind of thing. It was our legal files writer, John Dranius, and I called him up one time, and I had been doing the two things you shouldn't do together, which is drink and look at eBay. And I accidentally became the owner of this Saab 96 two-stroke that was, I think it was in Missoula, but I'm not sure. And it was sold by a guy who made his real living selling ground up reindeer antlers to people in Japan as an aphrodisiac.
Great.
He said that the car ran really well when he pushed it in the garage a decade ago. And so I called John and I said, John, you just bought half a Saab. And he said, what do you mean? I said, send me $3,500 because I bought you a really great Saab. And we're going to fly to Missoula and drive it home. And so we drove, and John, for those who don't know him, he arrived, he had not only his toolkit, he had an apron and knee pads. So that because he knew he'd be working on the car.
Right.
So when we actually got the car out of the garage and we got it running, the guy said, what are you doing with this car? The owner, and I said, well, we're driving it back to Portland. And he said, oh, you guys, he said, that's ridiculous. And I said, no, it'll be okay. So we got, I don't know, maybe 50 or 60 miles, and the tread came off the right rear tire.
Imagine that.
I mean, well,
what are the odds?
And I think the date codes for the tire were 1836 and 1840. So John gets all excited about the fact that the tire had shredded, and he puts the key in the ignition and snaps the key off. So we had to fish the key out, and we got the spare on, and then there was a Les Schwab's. I don't know where we were, near Spokane somewhere, and we pulled in, and John said we need 4 new tires, and I said, John, only one of the tires went bad. Why would we buy 4 when only one went bad? So he talked me into buying 4, and I don't know how far we got until the engine seized. I remember, because these are two-stroke and they freewheel, and I remember it just kept coasting, and I said, John, the engine seized. He said, no, you're just not giving it enough gas. I said, no, it's seized. So I'm going like this and nothing's happening. The car rolls to a halt, noses up to a pile of dead animals that with the Washington State Highway Patrol, when they take roadkill, they dump them all in one spot. And this car went right to that spot and just stopped. So anyway, that's the.
Well, I think that's a good way to kick off this. That's going to be pretty much how tonight goes. So I put together a series of questions, and I'll turn off I'll put the slides up, and then I'll take it off so that it's not on the screen all the time. But when you have dinner with someone every week or twice a week or whatever, you get to know a lot. So I thought this would be fun for us to let everybody into what our lives have been like for the last 6 months.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So, first of all, Keith isn't your real name. It's a lie.
It's my middle name.
What is your?
I'm Vernon Keith Martin. I was named Vernon because my mother's older brother Vernon was in the Marine Corps, and he was missing in action fighting in the Chosin Reservoir at the age of 22, I think. And he came home from Korea the day I was born. So to honor him, she named me Vernon, but decided to call me Keith, which has created a personal relationship with TSA over the years. It has been my poor mother's departed, but my question to her would be, Mom, why couldn't it have been Keith Vernon Martin?
Right.
And that would have been, no, it's Vernon Keith.
All right. Well, that kind of takes us back to the beginning, which is, you were born in the Bay Area,
San Francisco,
and that's where you spent your early years of your life
before coming to Portland for college.
Right. So, getting to know you, it's like that sounded like such a almost an idyllic time in some ways, and your visits to your grandparents' farm and having free range of the city, things that you probably wouldn't be able to do nowadays.
It was a really good time. At the age of 7 or 8, you would get on a streetcar and go to different places, and my grandparents who raised me didn't care about that. They felt safe. You'd go to Steinhardt Aquarium, you'd go to the zoo. Those places were all free. I played in a rock band, I played keyboard, and we did warm up a couple of times at the Fillmore Auditorium, and there'd be the Doors and the Yardbirds, and they were just bands. You don't even think, you just go there and you'd always get an apple and a free poster. And there was lots of sports car racing. I went to my first sports car race when I was 15. A friend of mine was a corner worker at Cotati Raceways. And we went up in his Alfa Giulietta at 6 in the morning and stood on hay bales. And I remember watching TZs and Porsche 906s being unloaded from trailers and racing. So it was and there were rallies. There was a whole column of sports car rallies in the Gordon Martin was the motorsports editor for the Chronicle, and you could have this whole with the gimmicks, TSD, all sorts of things. We would every Friday and Saturday night we would go on some kind of sports car rally. It was just amazing. Yeah.
And did you do that with friends? And
our buddy, the sports car buddies. And Julia, that one of the things that we learned was that they would, for instance, you did your check-in desk, they would have an example of what a checkpoint looked like. Mm-hmm. Here's a sample of a checkpoint. Well, it always turned out that checkpoint was a real checkpoint. And so you would take your score sheet and ask them to sign you in. Right. But it was things like that. The one memory I have of a gimmick rally instruction is that we were driving through an intersection and it said, no left turn onto streets to the extreme right. And the instruction said left on Goldwater Street. Right. So I missed those. Anyways.
I hope everybody got that joke. You've got to be of a certain age.
Yeah, so there's lots of car stuff.
Yeah. So is that where you got into cars?
To make it very brief, my grandfather who raised me had a Ford 8N tractor, and at the from age of 3 or 4 on, every Saturday when he would go to disc and plow, he would set me on the front of the tractor. I'd hold on to the radiator cap with my knees braced on the side of the tractor, and he would just drive. And I remember the feeling of the vibration and the heat. And he'd talk about the orchards and planting them and what it meant to disc and what it meant to plow and how to switch out the implements on the back. Right. So I had these memories of being with my grandfather and being in a machine. And that started very young. When I was 6 or 7, he taught me how to drive the tractor. Oh, cool. And they have a hand throttle. Yeah. So we just threw on the lowest hand throttle. And I just spent hours just driving around the property, going as near as I could to the property line where the subdivision was, and waving to all the other kids and going, nan, 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 and I want a tractor and you're not. But so I learned to drive early. Right. The day I turned 16, I got my license or my permit when I was 15 and a half. Right. That day when I got my permit, my grandmother had a 65 Mustang. I got my permit and she said, I'm glad you have your permit. Drive me to Los Angeles now. So we got in the Mustang and drove to LA. The day I turned 16, I was first in line at the DMV. I passed my test, and then I bought a Bug-Eye Sprite for $30, which had no first or reverse gear, which was complicated in San Francisco. But I was in those days, yeah. I had a sports car, and I lived for road and track and car and driver, and suddenly I was one of those guys who had a sports car,
right?
And it had supposedly 4 speeds, but really 3,
right?
Because it had a chip cluster gear,
right?
But it just it was so cool because most American cars were big then, and foreign cars were little and zippy, and we all flashed our lights to each other and waved and did things like that. So, and it was my car. I was 16 and I had a sports car. It was the coolest thing.
Yeah. Well, that sounds great. I'm surprised you don't own a tractor, by the way. How did you miss out on that one?
Is that a suggestion?
Yeah, I'd be down for that, by the way. So let's kind of move on to the. So what's it all about, Alfa? How did you get into Alfas?
The friend of mine who took me to Cotati, who was a turn worker, had a 57 Giulietta Spider Normale. It was his mother's car. And he was the janitor at the church where I was president of the youth group, a Presbyterian church. And I remember pulling up my Bug-Eye behind his Alfa. And I'll never forget, he walked over to me and he said, "When are you going to get a real car?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Come look at this." He said, "First of all, it has wind-up windows. Right? Secondly," he said, "when you open the hood, it's got an all-alloy engine. It's got double overhead cam." He said, "You have a tractor lump under the hood of your car. It's cast iron, it's push rod." He said, "I have double overhead cams. I have big finned brakes." He took me for a ride in it. I thought, this is really cool.
Right.
This is really cool. And so it was like a junkie getting the first,
first one's free.
So before long, I ended up with a 63 Giulia Spider Normale, which I had for quite a while. I took to Reed College with me. And it just, when I worked as a mechanic on a team that raced Alfas, rubber chicken racing. And once you, in that era especially, Alfas were so far superior to anything else that you could buy that it was intoxicating. Taking the cam cover off and seeing the chain there, and taking that removable link out and tensioning the chain, and doing adjusting the valves with those little shims. Right. Where I remember many times getting it backwards so that I ended up, after doing all the work, having every valve with no clearance whatsoever. But they were really amazing cars. And because the next step up was really Maserati or Ferrari,
right,
which were a lot more expensive for Alfas. MGs didn't compare, Triumphs didn't compare. So Alfas just got in my blood.
Yeah. So there's a great story that you shared with me about taking a road trip down to, I think, Vegas and then onto the Grand Canyon.
Well, after my sophomore year at Reed, I wanted a Duetto so bad I could hardly stand it. I mean, I wanted it. I came home. I worked at Macy's, I worked all summer, and I bought a 60. This was set like 1970. So I bought a 3-year-old Duetto, white with black, for $1,800. It had 50,000 miles on it. No pre-purchase inspection. No, it was a 50,000-mile car.
Right.
It was 3 years old.
Right.
But I was 19 years old, and I had a 67 Duetto.
Right.
A car that would go 100 miles an hour in fifth gear all day long. I mean, so I immediately called my friend in Portland, and I said, "I bought a Duetto. I read that you can get 99-cent steak breakfast in Las Vegas. If you fly down here, let's drive the Duetto to Las Vegas and have 99-cent steak breakfast. It's worth it. I almost pays for the trip." So he flew down. We got in the car. We drove to Yosemite National Park, and here we're kids in a Duetto.
Right. How old were you at this point?
19.
Jeez. All right.
And I know that we got in a big fight going across Death Valley because we had a cooler with ice in it. And I kept reaching in and taking the ice, and Larry would get mad and say, "If you eat the ice, there'll be no ice." And I said, "If I don't eat the ice, I'll die." So we get into Las Vegas at about 1 in the morning, and I see a sign at a hotel that says rooms rented by the hour. And I turned to Larry and I said, oh my God, how amazing is this? You only have to pay for the number of hours you actually sleep here. Why pay for the whole night when you just have to pay for the time you're sleeping here? I thought this was the smartest thing I've ever seen in my life. So we went in and we got into the room and Larry said, you know, I'm not sure this is the kind of hotel you actually want to stay in. He said, there's some really big bugs in my hotel. So we decided not to, I think we paid for 1 hour and left.
Right. So Larry was the smart one in this duo.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure either of us would be. He was the less dumb one. Okay.
I just imagined Dumb and Dumber.
So we decided to go from there to the Hoover Dam, which we did, and we could drive across it. And then from there we went to the Grand Canyon. Remember, we're 19-year-old kids, right? Well, where are we going to go today? Hell, let's go to the Grand Canyon.
Right.
So we go to the north rim of the Grand Canyon. We take a mule ride into the canyon. I had a cassette player with me that had Grofe's Grand Canyon Suite on it. And so I played the music from the mule ride, boom, 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 while we were on the mule going into the canyon. And I'm a Reed College hippie with hair down to here. And I said, why would I do this without a soundtrack? You know, I mean, so we finish the mule ride and we go to a dance. There's a dance at the north rim, and I'm dancing with a girl who's kind of cute, and I'm having a good time. And this other guy comes over and says, that's Ranger Rick's wife, and you should like not really be dancing with her. Right. So I went out to the parking lot, and my car was covered with tickets. I mean, like tickets for everything, you know, 4 wheels ticket, 2 wheels, and plus a note that said, if your car is ever in a national park again in the history of time, we're going to confiscate it. Right. And so I thought, well, being with Ranger Rick's wife was probably not the best decision. She was a good dancer. So on the way home, we decided we go across Nevada, and we're going 100, 110 all day long, which in the Duettos 5,000 RPM. And really, I have to tell you, loving Alfas and having the dual Webers, you know, cast iron headers, 4-wheel disc brakes. So Larry, we go down this deserted road past these gates, and Larry has a sheet that we sleep on that's bright pink. Who knows? Pink plastic. So that we spread this big pink plastic sheet out, put our tent up, sleep that night. In the morning, we wake up and we look, and the big sign says, U.S. Artillery Testing Range. So we packed up the sheet.
Good thing you had that bright sheet. It's like Hunter's orange, you know.
But you know, if you think about 1969, 1970, the Duetto was so incredibly beautiful, just beautiful, and it had my 63 Alfa was a Normale, so it had a 2-barrel downdraft carburetor, front drums. The Duetto was just hot, and it had Dustin Hoffman, and you know, and I actually had in my cassette I had Parsley, Sage, Rosemary, and Thyme, and I would play that Simon and Garfunkel tape
when you were trying to pick up women.
Yeah, chicks. Well, we actually had
Mrs. Robinson.
We had a little bag of peace symbols and things that we would try to meet girls with because we were from San Francisco.
Gotcha.
You know, I'm from San Francisco. Here's a peace symbol. It didn't work that well. But,
I can't imagine.
This is nice, Dad. Thank you.
So but just that memory of just calling a guy up and saying, let's go to Vegas.
Right.
Let's go to the Grand Canyon.
Right.
And the car, and you think about it, these cars, 58,000 miles on the car. Yeah. You know, it was ready to burn his first valve.
Right.
You know, but I mean, what a fabulous thing for kids.
Yeah.
You know, and Nevada had no speed limits in that area.
Oh wow.
So that's the Alfa.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty incredible opportunity. We don't have that. You know, kids don't get that today. So
Alex, excuse me, but Alex could tell you about.
I was going to say, speak for yourself.
The Boxer trip we took.
I have lots of stories.
Well, yes. And I'll just tell one brief story on Alex. I went to spring break we had a Porsche Boxer S, and I said, I found this hotel down by Klamath Falls at the border that has a mineral springs pool. in it, and it should be a really fun place for us to stay.
Right.
So we arrive, and there's nobody at the front desk, and she says, if the door to the room is not locked, I am not staying here. So we push the door to the room, it opens.
Right.
You know, so I said, well, I think we'll stay. So I go back into town, and she's not 21 yet, so I buy her a can of beer and a microwave lasagna dinner so that she will stay with me in this hotel.
Right.
And the next morning we go to find the Mineral Springs pool, and it is the brightest green that I mean, Alice can remember. I have a picture of her in the green. It looks like a toxic waste dump.
Right.
Because guess who got in the pool for a photo?
Alex, get in the pool for a photo. Come on, Alex, come on, just get in the pool. I'm sure it's safe.
Was it the color of this pillow?
Oh yeah, it was disgusting.
But that was the day she hit triple digits in a boxer for the first time.
Well,
And so we're in a boxer, and I just said, where should we go next? And she said,
Home.
Hotel.
Right.
And I said, so it was a Red Lion somewhere, but it was okay. Anyway. So,
no, that's awesome. So, you know, you went to read, took a detour to New York to dance some ballet and learn some stuff at Juilliard. And now you're back in Portland, and you've been working at Tonkin for a little while. So, tell us how you got the Alfa market letter going, and the precursor. You know, that was the precursor to sports car market. Like, what possessed you?
Actually, well, irrationality. But the Cindy Banzer was with me. We were married at that time, and she was part and parcel of the creation of the Alfa market letter. And I always want to make sure she gets the credit she deserves, because without her, we wouldn't have done this. There was at that time, there was a Ferrari market letter, there was a Maserati market letter, there was a Ford market letter, but there was no Alfa market letter. And I was afraid if I didn't do one, somebody else would do one, and it would be crappy, and I'd be really pissed off about it. So I thought, I'll just do one myself.
Mm-hmm.
So we called it we paid people all over the U.S. to clip ads for Alfa Romeos out of their Sunday papers and mail them to us, so we could put them into the Alfa Romeo market letter. And which gave us like 150 Alfas for sale, and nobody cared if the listings were 4 weeks old, because that was the time, you know.
Right.
So the Alfa market letter, the Ferrari market letter, and Maserati market letter, both those owners, Gerald Rausch and Frank Mondrano, they owned their own printing presses.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, well, I went to our printer, and I said, I'm thinking you need to give us a better deal, or I'm going to buy a print shop. And he said to me, you're not smart enough to own a print shop. I've never forgotten. Those are, wow.
How'd that work out?
Yeah, well, I bought one that afternoon. And the reason was that Kinko's had come in. So there were the kinds of presses that would do one color.
Right.
They actually call them duplicators.
Right.
And that there were multi-liths that we had. And so I bought 2 or 3 multi-liths, and I had a spare warehouse. And so we started printing the magazine ourselves and stapling it ourselves and putting the labels on it ourselves. I mean, it was like a farm to table operation. Cindy sorting things out by zip code. We put an ad in Hemmings Motor News saying, subscribe to the Alfa market letter for some 30. We got like 100 subscriptions. Wow. And it was like, we've got, geez, like we have to do something. Like, oh no.
Right.
So we did the Alfa market letter, and that was okay. We got every single Alfa owner in the United States who was willing to pay $33, which was 211. So we tapped the cream of the Alfa owner market.
$33 was a lot.
And for some Alfa owners, it's still a lot.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, well, let's do a magazine called English Car Market Letter, because that's a broader market.
Right.
Triumphs, MGs, broader and even cheaper than Alfa owners. Mm-hmm. So here I am doing 2 magazines myself, all the typesetting, all the writing, all the printing, the whole 9 yards. I remember going upstairs to Cindy, and I said, I'm adding German cars. I'm calling it the Sports Car Market Letter. I can't handle doing two separate ones. We're just going to combine them all.
Mhm.
And as I recall, her enthusiastic response was, whatever. You know. But it turned out that by adding German cars, first of all, we infuriated the Alfa owners.
Right.
People offered to pay us to cut the German car ads out of the magazine before we mailed it to them each week or month. But we ended up covering the whole market, and we started getting advertisers.
Right.
And it was, I tried to sell the Alfa Market Letter for $500 to somebody, and they wouldn't take it.
Right.
So it turned out to be desperation, but it worked out okay.
Right. Right. Well, you know, I think it also opened a lot of doors to you, to, you know, as it grew, it became part of a bigger, you know, elevating your name and Cindy's into that upper echelon of like the collector car world, and that led to let's see, I want to share. Oh. So you now you had a really interesting adventure as part of this, where you got to go to the Mille. So I thought that was kind of a fascinating story, and you did it with a baby.
Well, that's Alex on the right there. And that's Cindy and I. It was a 1947 Seata. That's chassis number 1, and that was the Italian hill climb championship in the 750cc class in 1947. What happened was I had a friend named Barry Rusinoff who called me and said, I have my car entered in the Mille. All the fees are paid. I think it was on a Tuesday or Wednesday. He said, if next week by Thursday you can be in Brescia, you can drive my car in the Mille. And I said, well, thank you, but what's the Mille? And because Martin Swig had been the first American to ever go in the Mille, and I think that was 88 or 89 with his 1900 Zagato. So I called Martin, he said, oh yeah, it's really fun, you should go.
Yeah.
So I went upstairs to Cindy, and I said, what about Alex? She said, well, let's just bring her with us, because she's, let's see, 7 months old, 8 months old.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll just take her in the car with us.
Right.
Because we had no idea the size of the car. But we have this idea that we just take the baby bassinet and strap it behind the seats.
Right.
So we end up flying to Brescia, and they said, here's your car. And I said, well, where's Alex going to be? And we had a friend named Matt Jones, and he took us to meet an Italian family. And they had parakeets. And I've always felt that if somebody has parakeets, they're trustworthy, and you should allow them to take care of your child. So,
it's a good rule.
So I said to Cindy, you know, if you don't feel good about this, we could just skip the Mille and just sit here and kind of enjoy a good time. If you feel nervous about leaving Alex with this family we've never met and whose names we don't know and and she said, no, Alex will be here when we get back. She said, come on. So we left in the Mille. It was the car was really small.
Yeah. And
750 cc's is you were racing flat out the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
It poured rain. The time when we were going through Rimini, we stopped and Cindy bought 2 umbrellas. Mm-hmm. And so in the pouring rain, we would drive with the umbrellas up like this. And then it started to snow on us. I mean, and then we're kind of keeping up okay. We were getting a chance to see all the cars in the Mille over and over again, because at each checkpoint they would catch up to us and then pass us again. Right. So we're on the last leg, and Cindy says, we missed the checkpoint. Actually, we come back earlier. It's part of the Mille is TSD, and we finished first overall with Cindy as navigator in one section. And I have that in writing. Although it says Rusanov, because the car was entered under Rusanov. And all the kids that got out of school would have the sheets of the cars, and they would see us. They would all yell "Bravo, Rusanov!" as we went by, and we'd say something like in Russian back to them. But so Cindy says, we missed a checkpoint. And I said, I don't care. She said, no, if you don't get all the checkpoints stamped, then you don't get a score. Yeah. I said, I don't care. And she said, we're going back to find the checkpoint. And I said, if we missed it the first time when we were in the group of all the cars, how are we going to find it now 2 hours later?
Right.
And she said, go back. I said, okay. So we're going back. All the other Mille cars are going this way past us, right? Everybody's yelling at us that we're going the wrong way. And, well, that's what we think they're yelling because we don't speak Italian. But they're all yelling. We finally get to the checkpoint as the guy there is finishing his lunch and about to close up.
Right.
And he gives us that last stamp.
Right.
So Cindy was gratified.
Right.
This is us finish at the finish. And I remember we left the finish line there to go back to the Master Hotel in Brescia. And we started going down a one-way street, which is, we've been going down one-way streets the wrong way for the whole event.
Right.
And a police officer pulled me over and he said, Mille, finito. So in other words, the Cinderella, the glass slipper, it was all done.
Right.
But I want to, first of all, thank Cindy for being a fabulous navigator. And also the Russelmas, because now the Mille is, now it takes 4 days, then it took 2 days.
Right.
And it still wasn't a race like it was originally, but it was, no Americans were there.
Right.
I mean, and 1,000 miles in Italy in that car. I mean, there are no doors on that car.
Yeah.
There's no top. How could there be a top since there's no windshield?
Right. Right.
I mean, since there's no windshield, there's no windshield wipers.
I just love in that picture the sense of relief and exhaustion, like washing over your face simultaneously.
Those are those Dennis Jacobson, Sterling Moss, dirty.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
You're filthy.
Yeah.
But it was an experience of a lifetime, and I just am so grateful that Cindy said yes. I'm grateful that when we got back to the house, Alex was still actually there.
Right. Right.
That's nice.
Yeah. Alex, you turned out okay. So.
Well, we'll define that later. But yeah,
From
minimal insecurity issues and all that stuff. Totally fine.
So anyway, that was really, it was really an experience of a lifetime, and we had no idea what we were getting ourselves into.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think what's your rule that you shared with me?
Oh, it's something Alex and I thought, when in doubt, always say yes.
Yeah.
Because if you say no, you know exactly which will happen. Something will happen, which is nothing. Where if you say yes, I'll make this story very brief.
Dad, I only told you that saying because I wanted to go to London.
Pardon me, dear?
I only told you that saying because I was using it to my advantage to go to London with you.
Alex and I was about to lead a Land Rover tour to Eastern Oregon. I got a call from the head of Bonham's. He said, we're having our 25th anniversary in 5 days. We'd like to fly you over to be there. And I said, I'm about to go on a Land Rover tour to Eastern Oregon. I don't think, and Alex turned to me and said, Dad, you said, say yes.
Right.
And I said, okay, I'll say yes if you'll fly my daughter too.
Right.
And he said, okay, fine. So that Sunday, I come back from the Land Rover tour, just filthy with mud. We get back around 11 in the morning. By 4 in the afternoon, Alex and I were on the airplane flying to Seattle and then flying business class to London, where they put us up at the Royal Automobile Club. And we went to the reception that night at Bonham's, and Robert Brooks took me aside and he said, we didn't really bring you here for our anniversary. And he opened up a curtain and he said, this is the Ferrari GTO that we're selling at no reserve this August in Monterey. And we brought you here so you could break the news and tell the world that we're selling a GTO. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Pretty
amazing.
And really a lot of it because Alex just said, say yes, Dad.
Yeah. So, starting, I think there's a theme that you and I share around entrepreneurship, and it sounds all fun to start a magazine, but it's a business and it's an enterprise, and it's got a bottom line and people's livelihoods depend on it. And that wasn't the first thing that you started. I mean, you started Ballet Oregon. You started a number of things. So, talk about the hustle, the change, the pivoting, like the evolution that when it was just a print shop in your, garage to what SCM is today.
I think that ignorance was my best friend. I have never taken a class in journalism. I've never taken a class in publishing. I didn't know what the right and wrong way to do things were. I was just trying to figure out how to get this magazine out the door to make it something that I wanted to read every month, so I'd have interesting voices in it, and to figure out the cheapest way to do things, or the most cost, like buying our own printing presses and things like that. So we've had a 34-year run. It's hard for me to imagine 34 years doing this of my life, being involved with this. I think it started before Alex was born. I think all you can do is always be clever and never be afraid to try stuff. You know, Ted Williams was the last batter to get into the Hall of Fame, and he batted, I think, 406. That means he struck out 6 times out of every 10 that he went to the plate. So part of what we have to do, one of the rules I have in a staff meeting is we never discuss something without coming to a conclusion, period. We never say, let's do some more research, because even if the decision is wrong, like when we launched American Car Collector, which turned out in the long run to be wrong, we learned an enormous amount from it, and it made us better at doing sports car market. Right. But you cannot let yourself be paralyzed by fear. You can't bet the farm. You can't but you have to not be afraid to try it and then say, I mean, I just, 2 years ago, we printed a yearbook, the year in review of 2019. We charged $100 a piece for them. I was sure we were going to sell 5,000. We sold 186. Luckily, I printed them digitally, so I only have 5 or 10 left over. Right. They cost me $50 a piece. If they'd been printed in a normal printing press, it would have been $3 or $4 a piece. Right. But you know how many you see go to bookstores, and there are thousands of these books really cheap. And so that's why I wanted to print just a limited run. When we do the next one, we've learned so much from doing the first one. Right. We have but we wouldn't have learned if we hadn't done the first one in the first place. Right.
Yeah. There's no failure. It's only lessons.
There's failure.
So
this is the jet that I got. That was the jet I got Alex for her 21st birthday.
Yeah. Well,
I got her the stairs to the jet.
I was gonna say, I have a very vivid memory of my 21st birthday, and that was not there. Alcohol was there, but not that.
Oh, that's good. That'll do. So, I want to talk about a little your taste in cars, or your curiosity in cars is evolving, and it's evolved a lot during the pandemic, actually. So, there is a lot of different ideas and different automobiles that are sitting in your garage nowadays. There's 3 of them in the collection on the screen right now. Mercedes SL,
the AMG
SL55, Jaguar E-Type, and a Porsche 928, which I had the pleasure of driving back from California. So, where are you going with your collecting nowadays? What's changed?
At one point I had 7 Alfas. I had every single Alfa that I could afford that I wanted. The next step up from my little Giulietta Sprint would have been an SZ at 400,000 or a GTA at 500,000.
Right.
Those were outside my reach. So I had all 7, and I had done everything I wanted to do with them. One of my fantasies was always the best year of Alfa's history was 1967 in the U.S. when they had the Giulia Super, the Duetto, and the GTV. And I always wanted to own all 3 of those cars. I did own all 3. I had them in wonderful condition, and I took them on a 1,000-mile Porsche rally. And Miles Collier, who owned that jet, and Parker Collier flew out to join us, and we drove my 367 Alfas on a 1,000-mile rally. I mean, it was so cool I could hardly stand it. The 3 Alfas out in the eastern Washington countryside, running nose to tail. Right. So anything I did after that was a repeat. Right. So with every one of my Alfas on the SCM 1000 2 years ago, I had 6 Alfas of my Alfas on that tour. And if people wanted to use one of my Alfas, if they made a $5,000 donation to the Portland Art Museum, they could drive one of my cars. So we raised $30,000 for the Portland Art Museum for them, and every car ran flawless. So I reached a point where I said, okay, I've done. I mean, it's like, okay, how do you want your dinner prepared? Rare, medium rare, 7 times.
Right.
All 7 4-cylinder Alphas, and it was okay for me to move on.
Mm-hmm.
So I started poking around in the world of late model supercars, like that SL55 is 500 horsepower. It's got 48,000 miles. It was $24,000. $24,000. I can't even tell you how little that buys you when you're trying to bring a vintage Alfa back to life.
Right.
And if I drive it I've driven it to Montana twice now. It always starts.
The heater works.
The heated seats work. It was just time for something new, and I'm never going to restore an Alfa again.
Yeah.
It's every Alfa I owned, I had to build from the ground up, and Bill Gillam was involved in many of them. They needed, because they were worn out pieces of crap, most of these cars. Mm-hmm. They needed everything. Mm-hmm. The cars now that I'm buying, the Jag has 23,000 miles on it, original, and it needed just a front suspension rebuild. The 928 needed nothing, which is why it's got a $7,000 bill waiting for me over at Al's at A&P, including the $800 climate control servo, one of the 4. It worked fine until you drove the car.
I'm sorry. I like my heaters.
But my point is now I'm now looking at GT cars where I can get into the car and it's comfortable, it's easy to drive. I've had my 40 years with Alphas. I still have a Junior Zagato, and Fred Lux is just finishing up a hand clutch on that car for me. So there'll be a button on the shifter, so I should be able to press that and then drive the car normally. So I've got the Junior Zagato, I've got the Duetto, I've got my 65 Giulia Spider Veloce that Bill Gillam did such a breathtaking job on. Whenever I go to the garage and uncover that car, I thank Bill for being relentless in not letting me. Every time I'd say, "God, Bill, this is costing so much money," he'd say, "It's going to be so fantastic." He also would say, "There's only one way to do it." I mean, oh, okay, we'll just repair half the rust.
Right. It doesn't work that way. No, just do 2 spray coats.
Yeah. No. So Bill was really. I really appreciate his dedication to turning out a fabulous product. Right. But it was really expensive. Yeah. I mean, that's a car. That car will last for. I mean, that car will not die now. He saved that car. Right. But so I've got my 65 Giulia Spider Veloce I've had for 30 years. Right. I've got the Junior Zagato, and I have a Duetto. So I still have my 3 Alphas. But I'm just moving to a different phase with these cars where I want to hop. When the smoke was here, I called Miles Collier, and he had a ranch in Montana. And he said, "Why don't you just come out to our ranch this weekend?" And I turned to Bradley and I said, "Well, let's just put our bags in the SL and go." Right. I felt pretty good that we'd make it, but I'm not sure I would have jumped into Duetto to go on a 2,500 mile round trip. No. I could have though. I mean, but my point is that I'm just in a different phase, and I love my Alphas, but these are all different. This is like a different. They're each like a different wine. The Alphas are their own flavor, where these cars are all they're grand touring cars. I mean, the V12 and the Jag is an unbelievable engine for its era. Right. The SL with its retractable hardtop is crazy. The 928, all I know is that I've watched Risky Business 4 times now, and I'm looking forward to driving it. But we changed, Chris. We changed and evolved, and it was okay. I had 7 Alphas, and I had 30 years with them, so it's okay.
Don't forget the Disco.
My Disco. Well, that's I'm back into the Range Rover tribe. Yeah, I just bought because I sold my Defender 90. And I would wake up at night having a cold sweat, and I realized it was because I didn't have a Land Rover of some kind. Right. And so the guy who manages my Land Rovers, Doug Shipman, had a 2000 Disco 2 that had 222,000 miles on it, that a client of his owned for 15 years, and who drove it to Spokane and back. And I paid less than $5,000 for it. everything works.
Mm-hmm.
It gets me back into the Rover tribe, which I really like. And I'm not afraid of cars that have miles like that if they've been driven and well taken care of. And I'm only going to drive it a couple of thousand miles a year. And in fact, that's true of all my cars. That in today's world, we're not going to put 15 or 20,000 miles a year on it. So if you can get 10,000 miles over 3 years, and you don't have a big maintenance issue, which you normally don't have with these cars if you buy them from a collector and have them looked at properly. Once they're set up, they're really good cars. So so I've got the Disco back, and I'm not going to admit this, but I really want a Citroen DS21. And people have been trying to foist Maserati SMs on me. But I think those are some of the ugliest cars ever built. But I've owned an ID19 and when I had one when I was in high school, my grandmother used to have me go outside. She said, "Go wake up the camel." So I need to wake up the camel. She'd go out and wake up the camel. So I'd start the Citroen, and the way Citroens work as their suspensions get energized is the back end comes up, the front end comes up, and then the cars settle down. That's the same way camels get up. So she loved, and I kind of like another one. The only problem with the Citroen, the nearest repair place is in Seattle. So it's 108. All the other cars I have, there are places here local, and that's a problem with the
that might be the deal killer.
It might be. It might be.
Otherwise, you'd already made up your mind.
It's done.
There's a blank check just waiting.
Well, the other problem is that when I or you let somebody know, gee, I'm kind of thinking about like my inbox is full instantly.
Those little musings that you put out in your SEM columns. It's people are paying attention.
People say, "Oh my God, Keith's being a sucker again." And there's when I bought my first Land Rover, I was on a Porsche tour, and this lady came to me and said, "John Graney said you're the only person in the room who'd be dumb enough to buy my 88 Series 3." And I said, "You're right. Right." So,
well, that was all the questions I had for you. So, first of all, I'd like everybody to just give a round of applause to Keith for joining us today. But the night's not over, because you have a big birthday coming up, don't you?
I do.
What number is your odometer rolling over?
7.
So we have a little cake for you.
Oh, look at this.
I don't know if everybody can see it. So there's a cake here. Wait. Okay, I need your help. So in times of COVID, it's hard to have a party. So
you guessed right.
I don't guess anything. Oh, let's stick in there. All right, everybody. So we're going to sing "Happy Birthday" to Keith. So let me get the.
That's actually as fast as I've ever driven a car.
Sure.
This picture on the screen was right after I'd passed. I was lapping Mark Carpenter.
Is that true, Mark? All right. I'll hold this up for everybody to see. So we've got a little cake here. So, all right, everybody. I'll get it turned off, but come off of mute. All right, everybody. Come off of mute. All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday to you. Woo! Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Keith. Happy birthday to you. That's awful. Yay!
Chris, that's fantastic. It's smoking like my cars right now.
Well, I knew that having a birthday in a pandemic, especially a big milestone birthday like this, is not as cool as you'd want it to be. So I thought when this was a perfect opportunity to be able to have a little bit of celebration with a lot of people that you've been friends with for a lot of years.
Well, the Alpha Club's been really good to me. I've made so many good friendships and had so many adventures. And so I want to thank all of you for being a part of my life for these 4, 5 decades.
Yeah.
And you've enriched my life immeasurably. So thank you, all of you. And I've enriched some of the technicians immeasurably.
Yeah,
as well.
exactly. Yeah, you keep it going around. So, I don't know if anybody else wants to say anything. If anybody wants to join in, you're welcome to. Hearing. All right. So that's the end of the program and the end of the holiday. So we're going to stick around online here and just mingle. But this didn't happen. I was talking a lot and all of this, but this happened with a lot of people's help. So a lot of the folks on the board were really helpful and instrumental in making this this night come together. So I'd love to give a nice big round of applause to everybody who is sitting in on this and making tonight happen. Because while, like I said at the top of the show, it wasn't the party we wanted, but hopefully it was one that was pretty fun and pretty special in its own way that we'll remember. And it was really great to get to celebrate this awesome birthday with you.
Well, Chris, I've got a book coming out next week, which is the first 10 years of my column in Sport Car Market. And we'll have a special price for Avery members. So I'll get you the promo code and the offer. But it's
a lot of the photos that were in this were clipped from that book without permission, by the way, totally without permission. So
since it's my book, it's okay.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, thanks everybody. Have a wonderful week. I've got one last little screen and then we'll come on, little slide. Work with me. All right. Well, tanti auguri alfisti. Let's hope 2021 serves everyone well and that we can get back to normal. And next year we'll be back at the Mac Club, enjoying each other's company. And maybe, even though we would have preferred to be together because of the distance, next year will feel even more special. So thanks for joining us.